While many Democratic candidates wait for the final results out of Iowa, one campaign was not publicly focused on the outcome. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg decided to skip the early states. That includes Iowa and also New Hampshire, which will hold its primary next week. Bloomberg's team is instead focusing on Super Tuesday contests. This week, campaign officials announced they've expanded to more than 2,100 staffers in all. Their operation spans across 40 states and territories, including in some expected battlegrounds for the general election. The Bloomberg campaign says it's on track to have 10 million voter conversations by next month. For more, let's bring in Dan Kanninen. He's the state's director for Michael Bloomberg's 2020 campaign. Dan, thanks so much for being with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I first want to ask you about the Iowa caucus's delay. Does this validate the campaign's decision to not focus on the state?
You know, Mike got in because he was seeing that this process was simply not going to produce a nominee at the strength necessary to take on Donald Trump. And I think we can look at his behavior on Twitter and the White House, often in chaos, and forget that the Trump campaign is exceptionally organized. They are really strong. They were great on digital in 2016. They've only gotten sharper and better on the data. And we realized that the process we had with candidates spending all their time in Iowa, having infighting, worrying about Mayor Pete's McKinsey filings, wasn't going to advance us to the place we needed to beat this incredibly formidable foe with so much on the line. And one point to make, every single candidate, the top six that made it through Iowa at this point, spent 859 collective trips into that state in the last year. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is in North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida. Mike realized we had to get there early into those battleground states, defend and make an argument on Democratic terms against the president, and build a campaign infrastructure that could take him on in the fall. It's the only campaign capable of doing that, and that's what we've built so far to the state.
So we mentioned how your campaign now has 2,100 plus staffers in 40 states and territories. Walk us through what you see as the viable path to the nomination. What's the delegate math the campaign is counting on here?
Yeah, happy to. So, Iowa and New Hampshire, the first couple of states, account for about 2% to 4% of the delegates at play in this contest. Super Tuesday has about 29 or 30% of the delegates for the Democratic electorate, and March in total has about 65%, two-thirds of the delegates up for grabs. So we're competing on the broadest plane possible for the most Democratic votes, which, by the way, includes these battlegrounds like North Carolina, and later on in March, Florida and Michigan, and then early April, Wisconsin. We even have staff on the ground in Pennsylvania, another fall battleground, because we realize having the investment and the infrastructure there is the best way to show the electorate that this is the one campaign with the strength, the commitment, and the message to take on Donald Trump.
Well, since the campaign is largely self-funded, Michael Bloomberg has been unable to appear in any of the debates. However, the Democratic National Committee, as you know, announced last week it would eliminate the donor requirement. Does the campaign intend to participate in the Las Vegas debate later this month?
Yeah, Mike has always said he is ready and eager to take on any debate anywhere. He's a New York guy, as you know. He's got a very good command of the issues and is good in his feet. I think he is looking forward to the chance to do that. One thing he said he wasn't going to do is, try to game the system by getting sort of fake donations to meet some arbitrary threshold. So if the rules allow him to be in the debate, he's happy to do it. And I think our message that we can resonate with are the accomplishments Mike has had, tangible accomplishments on gun violence prevention, on climate change, on health care, on creating jobs. No one has done these things, which are core Democratic values, to the extent of Mike Bloomberg. And then you land that with the fact that he's the only campaign with the strength and the reach and the message and to take on Donald Trump. That's what the Democratic electorate wants. And I think in that debate and in any other forum we're in, we will show that time and time again.
So is he planning on participating?
If we can be in those debates, I think we're happy to be there, yes.
All right. Well, Senator Bernie Sanders blasted the DNC's decision today. Let's listen to some of what he said.
Now, suddenly, a guy comes in who does not campaign one bit in Iowa, New Hampshire. He's not on the ballot, I guess, in Nevada or South Carolina. But he's worth $55 billion. And I guess if you're worth $55 billion, you can get the rules changed for debate. So to answer your question, I think that is an absolute outrage and really unfair.
Dan, is the campaign concerned with this type of criticism, accusing Bloomberg of buying the election?
The best part about this campaign is that we are not focused at all on trying to go tit for tat with Democratic rivals. We started this campaign realizing someone strong had to take on the president, take on Donald Trump. which is why we're playing in battleground states for the fall as well as the Super Tuesday states. Our focus every day in this building is on what messages, what motivation, what mobilization can we harness in all these places to make sure we can defeat the president. We're not worried about what the rivals are saying in terms of the early state process or the debate rules. We're really focused on what we can control, and what we can control is the biggest and strongest operation in the country to do the thing that Democrats want the most, which is make sure Donald Trump is a one-term president.
Michael Bloomberg is largely campaigning as a political moderate. If he's not successful in his bid, will he support the eventual Democratic nominee, even if the candidate is a progressive like Senator Sanders?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike has said that all along, that he would support Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. He's complimented them several times in certain parts of their approach. He doesn't agree with everything they have to say, obviously, but he views Donald Trump as an existential threat. He's made the commitment to leaving staff and offices in place throughout the fall, whether or not he is the nominee. He is all in on the single task of making sure Donald Trump is not reelected.
And how closely are you actually watching what's happening, though, with the Iowa results and what will be happening in New Hampshire on Tuesday?
Well, we have 2,100 staff, as you pointed out, in 40 states. We're going to have 1,250 events across the country on February 8th and 9th, and over 10 million voter contacts and conversations happening. We're pretty busy focusing on what we can control, and that's where my eyes and my attention are right now.
All right, Dan Kanninen. Thank you so much, Dan, for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.